Hello everyone. So we will start any moment now. So this is Tic-Tac-Toe part 5 of our mini course here. So this will be likely one of the last go-throughs of making sure that we get what's going on in the code here. So last week we were able to kind of go over the basic code in the getPressed function, which I will show momentarily right here. Alright, so we were able to check over some of these methods over here, and you know, just when we want to go over and see what's actually going on, if we were to go ahead, run our tic-tac-toe here, we can go ahead and we can draw. So wherever we click our mouse is where we go. So say I want to go in this box, then it goes X, and say I want to go into the middle with O, and so now the logical kind of move here would be to block with X, which is right here. So now with O we can just go anywhere we want. So let's say we want to go here with O, and you know, X goes there, O goes there, and X goes there, and it's a game draw. And then it'll go ahead and restart it because this is a loop. And once again, so we go in the corner here, and say we go here, and then X will go in the middle, and then O will most likely want to block right here. And that is just how the tic-tac-toe works on the board, right? So just to kind of see a winning situation, I guess. So X can go here, let's say O goes there, X goes there, and then O doesn't see it, and then X wins, and we have the line drawn here. So that's kind of how the code goes ahead and works. So that is just kind of a quick run through of what exactly is happening. And so one thing is, so Dragon PK, you say that your X's and O's don't appear when you click it. There are a couple reasons for why this could be happening. So the way this code is designed is that many mouses sometimes their intake on like what code is kind of going in can often be unclear. So many times the mouse that you have will send like the wrong message or something along those lines, and you know, it'll cause problems because you won't be able to, you know, see where what's happening with your code if you're doing it right or wrong. So some things that we can do to kind of check if we're doing this right is doing prints. So by printing, we can go ahead and determine if it gets to a certain part of the code. So like over here, when I go ahead and I check user click, I go ahead and say, if you get to this stage over here, I want you to go ahead and print the X and Y coordinates. So it's a simple debugging technique, and it's very useful. I use it all the time, and it's a check to make sure that your data is correct. And you can check this data by going ahead, doing it yourself, and then going like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So next thing that's we need to make sure we go ahead and do is find the right place to print. So obviously this is once we get into the methods. So this is thinking that, all right, the computer knows we clicked, but maybe it's getting the position wrong. So we want to go ahead and calculate the position, which we have over here, and it prints, and so it looks like it's got the position correct. Next thing is, all right, well, it's getting the position. Well, right here is another print statement, and this second print statement is making sure that it even gets to this user click over here. And the way we make sure it gets to it is if we go ahead and Control F for user click, which is the method, we will see there are only two occurrences. One where it is defined, and the second where we call it inside the main method, or where it's being run. And where it's being run is within a while true loop, so it will infinitely go. So if you notice here, I actually have one part commented out here, and I have another piece of code here. So a useful thing when you go ahead and program in Python is many times there's multiple ways to do something, and sometimes one way won't work for you but another way might. In my case, my mouse for some reason will not register using event.type. So if I am to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and run this program, once I run the program, you'll notice that it won't see that I'm actually clicking here. So if I click here, click here, click here, it won't print is down. And the reason why this is because, well, my mouse is not compatible with the way Pygame is trying to detect this, right? But there's a second way. So if we are to go ahead and open up a new Google window, and we want to track whether or not it's going ahead and seeing when we're clicking. So I want to see how to check if mouse button is down using Pygame. So this is going to be classic debugging techniques, and you're going to look over here. There's a lot of possible ways you can go. I see Stack Overflow, and I know Stack Overflow is quite useful, but I also see Pygame. Pygame is obviously the site that we're actually using, so it's probably going to be the most accurate. As to whether or not it answers our question, we will have to see. So we need to look through all of these right here, and we can detect, alright, there's a lot of functions in here. We don't really know what all of these means yet, so we're going to go ahead and look through all of them. So we go ahead and we read all of these possibilities here, and we notice that we want to look closer at get pressed. And if we go back at the code over here, you will notice that in my second variation of this else if statement, I do use get pressed rather than event.type is mouse button down, right? So this is two different ways of going about this, I guess. So the reason why I do this is because otherwise the program will not be able to recognize my mouse. So once you go ahead and you write down this piece of code, you will notice, you know, obviously you have an error, so you can't have this over here. So I don't like deleting code, so I will just go ahead and comment this out, right? And once again, we need to go back to our code over here, or the website over here, and we need to look at this and, you know, go through the example codes they have to make sure that we're using it correctly, right? And we can notice that there are actually a bunch of buttons here. If we go ahead and look at these two lines here, or these three lines, there are multiple buttons that we can get the states of. So we look at this and we see, all right, get pressed number of buttons is equal to 3. So it has buttons 1, 2, and 3. So this would mean that it returns a sequence of booleans representing the state of all the mouse buttons. So in the case that, say, our mouse has 3 different places where we can click and hold down, then it will be able to return 3 different values, each value being assigned to whichever button is being tested, I guess, or monitored. So once we go ahead and we make sure that we get all the information we need on this, we can go ahead and see that there are even more, and that means that we need to get into GitHub. So once we get into GitHub, we can see that there are actually a whole lot of different kind of example codes. And we can notice, all right, over here we have if pygame.mouse is get pressed, and we look at this and we notice, oh, it does return an array. So when it goes ahead and returns an array, we want to go ahead and realize, all right, well, suddenly we're not dealing with just one mouse click over here. We're dealing with multiple. So we want to make sure that our thing is going to work like that as well. So we're going to go ahead and we can just go ahead and print this. So pygame.mouse.get press, and we can just go ahead and print this. So over here, actually we cannot have this little block of code in between. So we can just add that right over here. And there we go. So no more errors here. So for to run this program, we'll see that it runs fine. And we will notice that it has a bunch of these numbers that are being spit out and x1 here. So we can go ahead and close out of this program here, and we want to look at what is happening here. Alright, well, we can see that it has 3 different values. So that means that there are 3 different values that we have to monitor. So instead of just writing this, it would be kind of incorrect because it would just be telling, is there something in this box? Instead, we want to go ahead and test exactly in the 0 spot right there. So we go ahead and we run again, and we will notice, oh, okay, so this is not a subscriptable object. What this means is that we can't go ahead and tell the program to only read this certain state. So instead, we can go ahead and check if it's equal to, say, true, or true, false, false, right? So I'm not sure if this is a string or not. I guess we'll find out when we go ahead and run it, and we will see if it says that it is wrong. So if we are to go ahead and click, we can see that there is a couple instances in which this thing turns true. That's good. That means that it is recognizing something. Unfortunately, it is not recognizing exactly what's happening, so we want to go ahead and compare this. So how are we going to be able to compare our code and be able to actually tell it? Well, we notice over here that it is calling at a certain index, and it seems like it works, obviously, because it is on GitHub. So we want to go back here, and we notice, oh, this is missing these 2 parentheses here. So suddenly we can go back here and we can just go ahead, take our index 0 and compare it only at index 0. We got no errors again, so we can go back and run it. And suddenly when we go ahead and go through this and we click here, we see that it gets X. And we go around and we click here and it loops through and it gets O. We go around and we click here and we can see that it is working successfully. So for just to kind of go ahead and if you want to go ahead and make sure you got the code down, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this down here. So I will go ahead and edit this piece of code over here. So you want to find this. It's located at about line 248 of your code, and it might be 247 because I added this extra print over here. So if we want to go ahead and delete that, you can go ahead and do that. And once I go ahead, I delete all the prints, all the extra stuff is gone. I want to delete this elif statement, and this is the code that should replace your old while true. This is only if your getting mouse pressed method does not work. Right? There's no need if it does work already, so you can see that if we go ahead and run this, there will be no more text going on here saying saying clicked or whatever, or the coordinates. So you can see that it will just go ahead and run on its own, and that is of course how it's intended to run. So this is the code bit right here. I will give you guys about 3 minutes-ish. If you don't think you can copy it down in 3 minutes, then go ahead and take a picture, and then you can copy it down after class or during this class. So 3 minutes, and then we can come back. All right, 1 minute. Alright, and time is up. So if you have not finished putting down the code, then you can go ahead and take a picture right now, and we can move on. So let's go back to the code here. So this code bit is fairly simple, and for many of these projects, it's not going to necessarily be too hard. And the often harder part is knowing the logic behind it. So going ahead and being able to trace through the code and know exactly what's happening is pretty important, and it's a skill that is going to only take practice to learn, just going over and doing it multiple times. So oftentimes when you see some of these codes like this, what you'll notice is that, well, there seems to be all these methods here, and then there's just this block of code down here where there's no method. And what this means is that this kind of acts sort of like a main method. This is what is running first. So instead of going through all these methods first, it's actually going all the way down here. And once it goes ahead and it runs it down here, well, we can see that the first line is game initiating window. So we go up and we go into the method game initiating window. And this is where we see that first window, where it's like tic-tac-toe, and then it starts setting up the board. And we can remember that it goes ahead and sets up all of the divisions between each of the lines. Just occurred to me that you guys could not see that before. But like right here, these lines, these 4 lines are what are being created. And that's what this is kind of creating right here. It fills the background with white. I'm not sure what the original color is. It's not white, I guess, or it's just to make sure. It could be random colored. And then it moves on to the method draw status. From there, it defines a variable. Then we go ahead and we go through the if statement and we check if there is a winner. And in the case that there is a winner, it goes to this if statement and it will go ahead and print a certain message. And of course it won't print if it is none. and instead it'll just say blah blah blah's turn. So if whoops, I need X to win. There we go. So if X were to win, we can see X won, and then it goes ahead and refreshes, and then we have a new game, right? So that's kind of how it works. And the next method, where it goes ahead and it should be check win. So check win is checking, well, did someone win, right? Actually, it might be draw XO. So we look through this code here. We want to make sure we look carefully. It checks winner, so it looks like winner is not defined at the time, and once it goes ahead, renders the message. So it turns out that it actually just updates it, so it doesn't call it quite yet. And then we want to come all the way down to the bottom, and then we get event.get, and then we go ahead and see the user click method. We go into user click, and it gets the coordinates, it splits it up and determines which box to put the X or O in, right over here, our columns and our rows. From there, it calls draw XO and check win, but draw XO is first. So it will go ahead and draw it on the board, and it will use that using our image, X image, which is defined all the way up here, and this is the picture. So once it goes ahead, draws the image, we can now go ahead and determine if someone has won or not, right? Because that's the ultimate thing. Well, if someone has won, well, that's what this method is for, right over here. It checks if there's a winner, and then it goes ahead and updates the draw status, which comes over here, and it will go ahead and update this box right over here. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and explain the next step that can be taken in these types of programs. So ZP, I see you ask, can you send the whole code after class? I definitely can send the whole code after class. We'll go ahead and send that in an email afterwards, so you guys can copy it. Dragon PK, I'm glad that your code works now, and hopefully you understand a little bit more of the debugging. So when we go ahead, and if we are to kind of pull up a new window, and let's pull up this one. Alright, so when we go ahead and we just search tic-tac-toe on the web, what we get is a Google widget, right? So it's kind of like a mini game. So you will see that all I'm doing is playing as X, and O is actually going ahead and being played by a computer. So this O over here is a bot, right? You guys might be familiar with these types of bots, but essentially what the bot is that it's kind of like an artificial player. In the case that you just want to play and you don't have anyone to play with, you're not in some sort of like online like league, I guess, or whatever. I don't really know what to call it. And you know, you just want to play some tic-tac-toe, and you don't want to, you know, play against yourself, because obviously that's boring. That's when these bots come in, because, you know, they're not like a person or anything. You can lug them out around wherever you want. So again, you can see that it's not like it's making a random move. It is actively going ahead and making sure that it's trying to win, right? It tries to get itself in a winning position, and it's able to catch these losing situations. So what this is called is, this is the premises of AI. So I'm not going to, of course, like explain to you how, like the background of AI, like the actual code behind it, because that gets really complicated. But what I will try to explain to you is that the next step forward. So after designing these games, oftentimes you gain a new understanding, an understanding of the background of how this code of the game works, right? Mainly is the checking win function. What do I mean by this? Well, the check win function is essential when it comes to programming any of these games, because that's the only way you can tell when the game actually goes ahead and ends. And in that case, what the AI does is that it grabs that information of this check win function and turns it into something that it can go ahead and use. In the case that it's kind of like something that's used as a play against, say, training. Training against people who want to get really good at tic-tac-toe, and they don't really know exactly how. They don't have any friends who are that good or anything like that. So what they go ahead and do is, when you program this bot, it's important to make sure that it can find the best moves. And the algorithm that is used, what an algorithm is essentially the thought process that the computer uses. So the algorithm is something that we can go ahead and try and detect ourselves. Of course, it's much harder for a human like us to go ahead and actually detect it, because we're humans. So we can't make these intensely precise calculations. Instead, when we go ahead and we make these calculations, they are assumption based, and of course we do try to analyze the situation to the best of our abilities, but many times we make mistakes. So the algorithm is extremely important, determining the correct algorithm. And if we go ahead and we look at the exact definition, it's a process or set of rules to be followed in calculations. So now we can kind of understand that the only thing that's going on is that the computer follows a certain set of rules, and it follows it to such an extremity that it will not make a mistake, right? It simply will not go ahead and make this kind of error. And we can go ahead, ask, what exactly is an algorithm? Well, on a basic level, an algorithm can be something like long division, right? Long division should be something that everyone is familiar with. You could be fast at long division, kind of slow at long division. You don't like it, but either way, it has a certain set of rules, and that is what we use to get to the answer. The entire basis of mathematics is based off of these types of algorithms. So the type of algorithm that AI actually uses is called a minimax algorithm. And if I were to go ahead and show you how this works, it would just be this Google thing. We can see that it clearly prioritizes not losing, right? We can see it will go ahead and make sure it doesn't lose. However, when we go ahead and give it a free move, it will determine that this is the best move, not this or this, because although both of these give it a winning turn, this one gives it 2 winning turns, and ultimately I can't block it. So this is something for you guys to, I guess, think about, and this will wrap up our tic-tac-toe lessons, as there is not much else to really talk about when it comes to tic-tac-toe. It's the first game, it's the most basic game, and it's also the game that is the most probably common introduction to these kind of mini projects, programming these mini games, right? So in the next week, when we come up with another game to teach you guys, you will notice that it follows an eerily similar pattern, where it goes ahead and follows this same type of algorithm, these same types of methods, right? Except maybe small changes from here or there. So your, I guess, homework, or something for you guys to think about, is really think about the essence behind designing some of these games, right? Because all these games have something in similar. There has to be a way to win, right? So that kind of wraps it up for today. That is all I have. Hopefully that small debugging session was able to help you out if you have any types of these problems in the future in which your code does not work, and you need the ability to go ahead and fix this certain situation. Google is super helpful. You need to know the trusted websites, which are Stack Overflow and GitHub. And with that wraps up our class for today. So if you have any questions, ask them right now. I'm always open to questions. And if you don't have any questions, thank you for stopping by, and I will see you next week with a new, fresh project for you guys to learn. And if you guys want an early heads up about it, there will be an email sent out within this next upcoming week. So thank you a lot, and if you don't have any questions, see you next week. Alright, it looks like no one has any questions, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.